Hello and welcome to the channel. And I'm sorry there's not been any videos for a while, but I've been extremely ill. I've had the flu and I've spent about 4 days in bed, and this is my first day back. Started last Tuesday. I started feeling unwell, and it just went on from there really. So we've got a bit jittery, but I'm back. So we're going to have a look at this Laney VC 15 that we've got here. So this is in with no sound, so I'm not sure what that actually is, but we're going to have a look. It's another one of these combos, little 15-watt combos, got all the controls in the top like the Blues Juniors and so on. So let's just turn it around. So you can see here we're looking at the back. You can see we've got a Jensen speaker in this. It's nice. So on the back we've got your power, fuse, usual deal, extension cabinet, effects loops, usual deal, reverb drive. And if we look, I'll just set this back. We can see. And you can see the controls there. We've got, so usual, we've got inputs, clean volume, drive volume, bass, middle, treble, reverb and tone on the end there. So let's check the fuses first, shall we? He looks okay. Let's see. However, he doesn't sound okay. I think he is blown. Although we need some. Yeah, he's blown, no question. Doesn't look blown, but it is. You can see there, look in the camera. So I'm working away on this, you can't see anything under the amp, can you? Yes, that's definitely blown. That is 100 milliamps. Is it always that 160 milliamps? It's 100. So that's given us something to go on, hasn't it? We better get the back off it, I think. Right, I've got a power lead in it, and I've got the current limiter on, so we're just going to run it up slowly with the current limiter, see what happens. So I'll switch on, bulb's bright, going dim, 40-watt bulb we've got in there to start off with. Watching the voltage go into the amp now. We've got 150 odd volts and climbing. These tubes are really close to that speaker. Well, that's come on. Let's swap that 40 for, actually let's just put 100 in with that. It'll be 140. That'll be fine at that. Yeah, so coming up now. Right, keep an eye on those tubes. In fact, I can hear it coming up now, I think. The current limiter's just holding them down, but something, it sounds a little hummy, doesn't it? Let's just turn off this light and have a look at those tubes, see if they're red plating. See if we can see which one it is. So the current limiter basically will control this excess current that we get in if one of these valves tubes is drawing excessive current. The bulbs will absorb it, but the higher voltage of bulbs I put in, the more voltage we get into the amp. We've got 200 watts now. Just keep your finger on the switch, and that does sound quite noisy. There's quite a hum on there. So 200 watts of current limiting. Let's just turn the volumes down. Ooh. So I'd say the caps are tired in that. Yeah. Yep. So the main electrolytic capacitors are humming. So just flick the current limiter off for a second. Well, the tubes appear to be okay. The capacitors don't sound very great though. Right, I've got this out on the bench, you can see. We just go in. A lot of heat glue, there's a lot of hot glue strands inside it floating around. Having said that, what's that capacitor? 100 microfarad, that one. I think we need to get a schematic. Oh, that one is bulgy there. If we look, not sure what those two are doing, but that one is definitely not looking good. But, there's three more there, and rather a lot of glue around them. Probably test okay though. Most of them do. It's just when you kind of see them like that, you're thinking, well, how long is it going to be before it pops open? This amp has been somewhere damp at some time, and you can see there's a bit of mould on the cables on the reverb tank. And I took it out its case, but it still doesn't explain why it's blown that fuse, does it? None of that. Let's have a closer look at these tubes. They've had some heat, my word. You can see there in the centres of those. Yeah, they've baked a cake or two in the time. And the other one looks the same. My word. So you can bet the bias is quite hot on this amp. Right, we've got this amplifier in a very precarious position. So it's actually stood on its end, and the reason for that is because by the time you've got because I'm using the extension speaker, because these are obviously disconnected. So we've got the extension speaker socket in here, and the mains power cord on the back there, and by the time they're in there, you can't really light on its back. So while we're testing, I've just stood it up on its end. So what we're going to do with this amp is check some voltages, and just see what's happening with this amp. Those tubes look extremely baked. Now I've put those in the tester and they test okay, but what we need to find out is, are they okay, are they running too hot, and are they matched? So we need to switch on. Now I've took the readings of the output transformer windings, so we need to get the bias, and there you can hear the hum. Now if we look on here, we've got the power transformer. Sorry, say again. If we look on here, we've got the output transformer. So this is center tap, and this is one plate on the one at L84, and that's the other plate there. So we've got red and blue. So we need to measure, first off, we need to see what kind of plate voltage we've got. If we measure, and we can, it's very easy for doing this. We haven't got to get into the tube sockets, we can just measure it from here. Let's start with red, 194 there, a little bit less there. What's going on? These probes that I'm using here, these Multicomp probes, are very small amount of the probe showing, but they're much safer to use when you, especially when you're delving inside things that are a bit compact like this. So that's telling me something already. So I think one of those tubes is drawing a lot more current than the other. So we'll just have to go onto the tubes now. I just want to see what's on the screens. About 188 on the screens. I've not got the current limiter on, have I? No. Right, so what we need to do now, so we know we've got a plate voltage of about 194. That seems a little low, doesn't it? Remember that, and I have to tell you that I've looked at the schematic on this amp, and it's very hard to read because it's almost out of focus. It's obviously been a JPEG. There's really no point printing it out because it'll be so faint the camera won't be able to see it. This amp is fixed bias, which tells me that the plate voltage being as low as it is, it tells me that the bias is high on this. So we're looking for 70%, and 70% of 12 watts, which is the dissipation of an L84, is 8.4 watts. So let's just measure across from red. We've got 6 volts. Let's measure from red to blue. We've got 10.5 volts there, 10.6 volts. Right, so I'm afraid we've got problems here. So red is 11.4 watts and blue is 14 watts. Blue is drawing 72.6 milliamps. Remember, that's idle. So the bias is absolutely out of the window on this amp. When this amp's in full tilt and you're blasting away with it with the guitar, those tubes must be absolutely scorching hot and on the limit, and that's probably what's popped the fuse. They've probably just, the current's just got, maybe it's only 100 milliamp fuse, maybe the current's just got so high it's just got too high for the fuse and popped it, rather than the tube red plating and popping it, which really is the same thing. The current gets so high it pops the fuse because it's gone past its rating. In this case it's just simply the current. The tube's not gone red plated. Now those tubes have not red plated. Those tubes also are a dreadful match. Have I got no negative volts on there? Why have we got no negative volts? Just put current limiter back on. My word, this thing is sick. Not sure what's going on with it yet, but are we just not getting a good enough contact? Or let's go down to the other tube. Well, pin 2 is grid, so I'm not quite sure why we're not getting any bias. We're not seeing any bias voltage. There must be some, or the tubes would just implode. But pin 2 is grid on an EL84. Well, that's a very strange setup there. So we appear to have no bias voltage, no negative volts on the grids, yet we've got, while the tube's idling, 11.4 and 14 watts. 14, yeah, it's a little bit over, but I've seen those readings on a Blues Junior when it's running idle. Yet it's showing no bias volts, no negative volts. How bizarre. What am I missing here? Right, here's a look at how well it looks when it's printed off. But this just gets worse. So I can make this out on my screen, big screen, easier, and if I point this camera at it, it will start flickering. But basically you might just be able to see is the diode for the bias. That's D13. I've found that, and there is some negative volts. There is a resistor there, and that is 4K7, and I suspect that's open, but this is where it just gets even worse. Excuse it, because I'm just sat at my desk now. If you look on that board, you don't really see that many components, but if you look down onto the back, and you can see, if you stand it right on its end, it's full of surface mount components. So that 4K7 is somewhere on there. Now the worst part of it is I can't actually see the number, so it's R something. It's not looking good. What I can't understand is how this amp's actually run with no bias, and the tubes have not red plated, and we've had, if you look there, we've got less than 100%. Now, granted it's fixed bias, and at idle it should be 70%, but it would still, you know, the Blues Juniors are biased at 12 watts idle, as we all know, if anyone's had any dealings with them. So why I can't understand, that's what's caught me out. You know, normally you would have had the old hum and, you know, the red plating starting, you just flick the power switch off. Yeah, that's over, but we've all seen a bit of that before as well. But that's less than 100%, and yet it's showing no grid voltage. You know, no grid bias voltage, no negative volts. So that one's caught me out big time. So I don't know from there. I need to get with the customer on this one, because there's quite a lot wrong with this amp. We've got some bulging capacitors. The tubes have been absolutely baked, although they test okay, but they have been baked. Right, I've had a word with the customer, and we're going to call it a day on this one, because it's going to just be too much to get this repaired. It's cheaper to buy one online. So all the surface mount parts are on the underneath of this board. The schematic is just know-how. So it would, I mean, we could find it. It's only a missing voltage, but we'd have to take all the board out to do that. We'd have to find that surface mount component. I wouldn't find that easy to do either, because I haven't got the equipment to do it. I could do it, but it would be difficult. Then we've got that hum in the background, which we sure is capacitors. So then we've got it needs a recap. We know that capacitor's gone there, so both of those, they're on the filaments. And then it really needs a new set of tubes in it, because they have been baked, and you can see they're baked. So those wouldn't probably need a new set of tubes. So by the time you've done and got it all back together, and then the customer also said that the amp had no gain either. So, and that's yet another problem we'd have to sort out. So, given its age as well, and all the faults there, we've decided on this one to call it a day. So it's a bit sad really, because you can't win them all, but that's how they go sometimes. As I say, they are quite cheap to buy online. I think there's one of these online for about £185 on eBay, and it's fully working. So that's going to do it for this one. It's been a bit of a strange one, this, and I must admit, I definitely got caught out with that bias, because, as I say, the tubes, one of the tubes, you know, is biased less than 100%, and yet we've got no bias voltage on the grids of the output tubes, so I don't know. But anyway, so that'll do it for this one. So thanks for watching. You all take care, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye for now.